Yes, people, welcome back to the studio. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at creative ways to edit vocals and samples in your tracks. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be starting a track or a 9-bar loop from scratch, adding vocals and samples, and showing you different creative ways that you can edit them in Ableton. Right then, let's get stuck in. So as you can see, I've built out a little groove at the top here. I've got 4 samples. No, I haven't. I've got 2 samples, an audio, 3, and I've got 2 MIDI channels. So I'm just going to play you quickly what I've made. So a very quick and short vocal groove to get things moving. So I've had a few people ask about kind of things you can do to your vocals and ways you can edit them in your tracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with the drums. I'm going to show you ways you can edit your drums. So what I've done is I've brought in a loop here, this top loop. So when you click on a vocal or on a sample, any sort of sample you've got, which is an audio, so you can tell it's audio because straight away you can have a look and you can see the wavelengths on here. This is in comparison to if you were working with a MIDI channel, and with the MIDI channels, as you can see on the one above, on the kick, that is shown by the little squares that I've drawn here. So with this sample, you can go to the bottom here and you see you've got beats. If you click on beats, you've got all these different settings here. These are really good ways where you can get creative and change how the sample sounds. The first thing I've done is, so with this top loop, I've actually pitched it down. So normal was like that, but because of the sort of so with the vocal, I wanted the drums just to be a little bit lower in pitch. So what you can do is, first thing you can do is change the pitch of your, so changing the pitch really helps to build that like grungy sound out on your drums if that's sort of the vibe you're going for. And if you go higher, you start to get these really like glitchy sort of sounds, which again can work in the right track. If you decided to cut up this drum loop with a very high pitch on them, then it makes a really cool sort of texture. But for the sake of this idea, I pitched it down by 3 semitones, and it adds that real grungy sort of variation to the original drum sample. So what I can also do is if I go to texture, I can change the grain size and the flux. Now you'll hear straight away what this does. I turn the flux up. You can't really hear the effect of the texture on these drums. The texture's more for a vocal. So if I just jump to this vocal, do the same thing. I'm going to click on it, solo it, click it. If I go to texture and change it, you can't really tell what it does here. So I'm just going to extend the original vocal and see. If I had to polite and just lose my chance at loving you, or what I'm thinking, business pleasing, then the real thing I keep me screaming for you. Yeah, you can't really tell actually. I'll find a better example of the texture. One other thing while we're on the vocal you can do though is if you go to complex, this is something that Sometimes if you've got a drum kit and it doesn't sound like the way you thought it would sound when you dragged it in. Maybe it sounds a bit delayed or a bit clicky. If you press complex on every sample, it basically smooths the sample out for you. So with the vocal, it's a very slight effect, but it's definitely complex is a good thing to do when you've got some sort of vocal or drums that sound a little bit weird. So I'll show you a good example. Sometimes when you add break beats, so I'm going to added an audio. I'm going to just search up breaks. Okay, this should work. To be fair, again, I think it's because the BPM I'm at, you can't really tell the effect of complex, but complex is like I said, a good thing to add to smoothen your vocals or your samples out. So let's just go back to this drum loop I've got. So I've pitched it down a little bit. Another thing you can do is if you click on beats, you see these transients. You can basically, the transient, if you shorten the transient by clicking one of these arrows and turning down this number, you'll hear it shortens the length of which the sample's played for. So if you're going for more of that really like groovy kind of cutsy sort of vibe, very like, you know, minimal sound, and you can change the transient on drum loops and it will really change the sound. Just depending on the sort of vibe you're after for your track. For this track, I quite like, I'm going to keep the transients open and just set them back to what they were. But that's another thing you can do. So I had another vocal that I'll show you. So there's a lot of different things you can do with vocals, with effects, changing them. One good thing I tend to do is if I'm adding some processing to my vocals, I'm probably going to add a bit of delay and a bit of reverb. So this is with a bit of delay. Again, it's just a case of adding it and just messing around with the settings, the dry wet, the feedback. Delay is always good. It just kind of helps the vocal spread out a bit, especially if you click on ping pong, you will hear it kind of spreads through the headphones. Always a good way to kind of build a bit of energy to your vocals. Then if I add reverb as well, just turn down the dry and wet and the decay. Really good for breakdowns. So yeah, that's a really cool way to edit your effects. Edit your vocals, add in some delay, and some reverb. What else have we got? So drums, a good way, what I'll sometimes do with my vocal is I'll have the original. So this is a vocal loop from a sample pack. What I'll sometimes do is I will create a MIDI, and what I'll do is I will basically copy and paste the vocal into this MIDI. So now you can see that it's here. And when I make a MIDI, add it in, I'm going to solo this a sec so I can show you. Now it's on here. If you click on slice, Ableton will basically slice up the vocal into different bits. So when you go onto the MIDI, it's almost cut it up for you into little samples, which is really cool to add across the track. So what I'm going to do is, now I've got the vocal split up, I'm just going to add essentially a few little vox notes. So and what you can do is, if you go back to the vocal on the MIDI, you can see where it's playing. So it's playing in this little bit. And I kind of want to just shorten it a little bit. That's nice. So when I play it now in the track, maybe just move it across a little bit. So straight away you can see I've taken the vocal and I've edited it. I've just chopped it up basically using the slice feature. And again, I'm going to add a bit of reverb. So taking the vocal, adding it to a MIDI, its own MIDI channel, and then pressing slice is a really good way to edit your vocals and add them into the groove of the track. There is an effect that I do also want to show you guys. It is that texture one. I'm going to see if I can do it with this vocal. One other thing you can actually do is, if you want to, you see, if you click on the vocal again, you'll see, like we were looking at earlier, you've got the complex, the beats, the tones, texture features, but you've also got the BPM. A good thing to do is stretching the BPM. So you can either times it by 2, and elongate it by double the time, or you can half the time. So if I press double on here, see, now that sounds pretty rubbish on its own, but if you go into the effects again and click like beats, that adds a kind of cool, like glitchy sort of vibe to it. But then if you go on texture and turn the grain and the flux up and down, you'll make this sound that I was trying to go for earlier. It sounds like a very old school garage warpy vocal sound. So that's really cool to try. Elongating, increasing the length of the vocal by doubling the BPM or halving, and then adding some texture. And then again, you add a bit of reverb and delay like we did in the previous vocal samples. And then you've got a really cool sort of sound. You could even chop this up. Quite a cool thing to have just before the drop. So let's just chuck it in here, see what it sounds like. So you can see it defo adds a bit of a cool sort of like vibe to the track. Just another way to get creative and edit your vocal samples. Again, I'll do another thing. So with the tops, what you can also do, sometimes what I'll do is maybe I'll only take like the first little bit of this top and just copy and paste it. So I only want like the first few bars. And I'll just copy and paste it. Then what I might do is I might just take a few little bits out. So it makes it just a bit more of a unique drum loop. So I could loop this, copy and paste. what I'd probably do then with this is I'd turn it down and it would be less of a leading top loop, and I'd then have maybe another drum loop underneath it. So I'm using this old school garage pack that one of my friends sent me. Shout out to Chambers. This is when you can add layers. So this isn't really getting creative. Oh, I guess it is getting creative. Adding more drum layers to your tracks, helping it just beef out a bit. So I've I've edited this top loop and I've added this next one in. So I'm going to call this one top loop 2. Top loop 2. And then playing them together. Again, I'm listening to this and I think it needs to be pitched down just a little bit. See, that one probably doesn't really work too well. A clap would be good. So let's add a clap. So then you can just start adding layers. You can just keep on adding loops, adding drum loops, adding the hi-hats, turning them up and down. What I'm doing is using the utility to turn up and down the volume. And you can hear the original drum loop we edited. One thing you could do as well, if you add a filter onto the drum loop and auto filter, you can then change the settings on this using various different filters. So I sometimes use the bandpass and add a bit of LFO, an envelope. So it's this really quiet kind of drum loop in the background, but it adds that bit of like movement. Yeah, so there's a few different ways you can edit your vocal, your samples, vocals. When I'm talking about samples, it could be drum loops, it could be tops like I've used, top drums, could be vocals like I've already mentioned. You could be cutting the vocals up, chopping them up. So many different ways to get creative with your vocals. I'll show you one more way. So on this channel, I've got an acapella, really cool acapella actually. Karen White Hunger. So this is the vocal. If I had to polite and just lose my chance at loving you, and what I'm thinking business pleasing, then the real thing. So first thing that comes to mind, I'm like, there's a lot of words here. It's a really cool track, but I kind of want to take the key, like maybe 1 or 2 bars out of this that I think sound cool and add it to my track. First thing I'd usually do with an acapella is put it to complex, which means it just smoothens the acapella out, makes it sound like it should do. Sometimes when you don't have the complex on, it can just sound a bit like robotic and a bit like not very nice to listen to. So I'm gonna just add the vocal in here. My chance at loving you, and what I'm thinking business pleasing, then the real thing I keep me screaming for you. So this bit, the screaming for you, is kind of cool. I keep me screaming for you. Screaming for you. Screaming for you. Screaming for you. Screaming for. Screaming for. Screaming. I might even just pitch it down a little bit. Screaming for. Screaming for. Screaming for. Screaming for. Screaming for. So I've kind of got this little chop from it, this little cut, and then I'm going to just add a bit of reverb just to see how it sounds. Screaming for, screaming for, screaming for, screaming for, screaming, screaming for, screaming for, screaming for. And then again, it's a little bit out of time. So what you can do is if you click on the sample, move this little green arrow, it will change where the vocal begins. So I want to kind of just bring it a little bit forward. But you can see here, like I'm just building out this idea. Well, I've only taken a little bit of the acapella, and I've kind of made it a bit more unique. I pitched it up and down. I've added complex on it, so it takes it from like more of an edit sort of vibe to more of this original track you're making, where it has samples in, but you've really made them your own. So yeah, that's all for this video. I hope you can get some really cool creative tips out of this. With regards to vocals and samples you use, there's no kind of end to the creative vibes you can add. A good place to start, like I've done in this video, is always just adding the audio, adding the sampling to the audio channel, and then just looking in this left corner at the different settings: complex, beats, texture. Complex Pro is just the same as complex. Repitching, which will be able to like automatically repitching the vocal for you. Tones, I don't really use tones, but defo give it a go, see what it does. And yeah, just see what comes out. You know, you'd be surprised sometimes that very simple changes can have a really cool impact on the energy and the track you're trying to make. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Any feedback is always welcome, and I look forward to catching you next video. That's all.